Recording.
Okay guys, this is the fourth week, and what I'm going to cover before we start is composition. I was going to have this in the fifth week, but you guys are moving so fast we're going to do it the fourth week. Okay, the things about composition, I've sort of got a hierarchy here, which I think are the most important points down to the points that are more optional and more a matter of personal preference. If you remember from the drawing classes, we talked about law of thirds, the golden rule, and the golden mean. In fine art, you never put anything in the center. Basically, it's usually a third down from one of the top and from one of the sides, or a third up from one of the sides and the bottom. The sweet spots are basically where I have the big black dots, and where I have the red hatching, cross hatching, is where you don't want to put it.
You're talking about the focus of
the focal point, actually the focal point.
Now, does that apply to abstract works
No.
as well?
No,
Okay.
you can break the rules once you know them. There are still life painters that will put a big round object in the dead center. In fiber art, the arena that my wife's in, particularly with quilters, they'll put something that's totally symmetric, dead center, and symmetric all around it. In fine art, basically the rule is you never put anything in the center, and you want things always unequal, not equal. But again, once you know the rules, you can break them, and contemporary artists break these rules intentionally.
You mean sort of asymmetric, right?
Yeah. For instance, here, this is what I consider a balanced composition for a landscape. I've got a focal point that's in the mid-ground. You notice I have trees balancing it out. I have a road leading to it. And again, it's about a third down from the top and about a third over from the side. Also, I have another compositional trick in here. I have a road that leads you actually into where the focal point is, which would be this little red barn. Although you can't see it's not red here because I drew it with a magic marker. What you never want to do is have a road or a river leading you out of the canvas, off the canvas. You always want to contain something that leads you into your focal point area. And I'll show you some of that with some of the still life examples I'm going to give you.
Do you sometimes sharpen up the focal point?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that.
Okay.
We're going to get to that. Basically, that's in here. You always want the focal point to have the biggest value in classical painting. The biggest value contrast that is between light and dark. And if you have any color, that's where you put it in classical painting. Okay. So, and if you want to put detail in, that's where you put it. Again, you want less and less detail as you go towards the edges. But again, people break these rules. The photorealists broke them by having detail every place at equal. There was no hierarchy. They copied a photograph verbatim with all the detail, all the hard edges that a photograph would give you. In still lifes, basically, the two that I've given you so far, we've been working on some sort of a triangular setup. This is standard. This is classical still life setup. Typically with unequal numbers of objects. Although I had an equal number for the little pewter still life setup, I had to put that in to balance that off. And I'm actually counting the colored material as the fifth object there. But your little apple painting only had 3 apples in it. There was a reason I only put 3 in and not 4 or 2. Because I wanted an uneven number. I don't want even numbers in still lifes. In portrait, typically, again, your focal point would usually be near the eyes. And again, you notice it's about a third down from the top and about a third over from the left side. And I'm going to show you an example of a classical portrait in a second where I have the focal point right about there. I've mentioned this before, but in painting you have something called high key, tonal, or low key. High key painting is where you have mostly darks, some midtones, and a few lights. So it's always most, some, and a few. Okay, and the low key is the exact opposite. So you got mostly lights, some midtones, and a few darks. And tonally, basically, is sort of midtone where you have a very limited range of lights and darks over the midtone range of value. Okay, and I'm going to give you examples of these. Again, I mentioned this, we have a hierarchy. It's most, some, and a little. So you can have a hierarchy in value. We just did that with low key and high key and tonal. You can have a hierarchy in temperature. You can have a painting that has mostly cools in it and a few warms, or the opposite, mostly warms and a few cools. You could have a hierarchy in intensity, that is, the painting would mostly be dull colors and with a few bright colors to really pop it. pop it out, or it could be the other way around. It could be mostly bright colors and a few dull colors. There's always a hierarchy, okay? If you want drama, you typically light from one side, which is what we've been doing. You can do backlighting, which is very popular, or you can do top or bottom lighting. Those both flatten the objects that you're trying to paint, particularly in still lifes. So to get form, you really want to use one light source. But again, these rules have been broken. There's artists that use two light sources, one with artificial light, which gives you a warm light, and one with natural north light, which gives you a cool light, and say two sides of a person sitting in a seat. And you'll see this fairly often. So, like I said, you can break all the rules once you know what they are. In landscape, which we haven't touched much on, again, you want to divide things in unequal manners. You need a foreground, a middle ground, and a background, and a sky. And typically, you want one or the other to dominate. You want either the foreground to dominate, or the background, or the sky to dominate, or the middle ground to dominate. Typically, your focal point is in the middle ground, and what I'm showing you somehow, in this little example, I'm leading you into like a big tree area here, where I have a big value contrast between dark and light, at least with the magic marker, and that would be my focal point.
So a lot of landscape artists who are considered top-notch are really good at finding, you know, like maybe, I don't know how to say this, but maybe like a patch of wood that.
Well, they make stuff up too. Oh. This is so simple. You could, if you basically are in, like in this environment out here, if you see enough landscapes, you can make this stuff up. I mean, that one up on the wall over there that I did, I made that up. That sunset's completely made up. The little winterscape over there is from a photograph, but I made a lot of that up too, because the photograph didn't work compositionally or color-wise. I just made it up. To me, landscapes are very easy. Of course, landscape painters get really upset when I say this, but, Still life, odd number of objects, we talked about that. Focal point, again, largest value for classical, largest value contrast, most color and brightest, warmest, hardest edges, most detail. You gotta focus your vision someplace on the painting, okay? And it's usually you're using these tricks to get the person to look there. Again, you can break these rules. I mean, people like Pollock, when he basically brought abstract expressionism in the art center of the world to New York City. If you look at his abstract pieces, there's no focal point. The whole painting is the focal point. So again, once you know the rules, you break them, okay? But you really shouldn't be breaking rules unless you know what they are. Okay, so you know what they are. Now, Nick, you want to follow me around? I'm just going to discuss some of these paintings, so follow me around, Nick.
Sure. Do you like Pollock?
No.
Okay, just checking.
All right, Nick, you gotta come over here. Get up. Get your butt over here. Come on.
Who do you like, Dan?
I like Dan DiMaria. That's who I like. Okay, this is a still life. This is low key. It's classical format with a contemporary subject matter. All right, and the focal point, you can actually see my biggest value contrast and a little bit of color I have is right here. Okay, this is classical format. Again, this is a portrait, classical format. Again, it's low-key, mostly darks, a few lights, and I'm having you focus in on the eye where most of the detail and the biggest value contrasts are between light and dark. And again, it's about a third of the way down from the top and a third of the way over from the side.
Looks better to me.
Looks like Durst.
This is a classical still life composition. It's basically at eye level. You notice it's a triangular format. I lead you in from, the light is raking across from left to right. I lead you into the vase, or vase, or whatever you want to call it. And again, this is your biggest value contrast, so the focal point is around this area, and I've added a little bit of color in the apples, but it's fairly dull. Okay, let's look at those are some of my older paintings. Let's look at something that's more contemporary, where I'm starting to basically break certain rules. All right, this one. This is, again, an impressionist color scheme. It's basically red and orange. And again, the way I'm getting you to look at the focal point, which is here, is by the way I have the hands patterned around this woman's face. And you notice that most of the detail, as you go back, I got less and less detail on the figures. So I'm forcing you to basically look here. All right, let's look at a landscape, a more contemporary landscape. This again is an impressionist scheme, but it's a split complementary scheme. What's a split complementary? What I've done is I've taken orange and blue, and I've split the blue into purple and green. So it's orange, purple, and green are the dominant colors. And again, I'm leading you in to the store
I'm stopping you with the red pump. So the focal point is here with this bright color, and I'm keeping you from going off the painting by stopping you with the pump, so that the focal point is in this area. Again, about a third over, about a third up.
Is vertical often used for stopping a
Yeah,
visual?
because you notice I got a lot of horizontals. I'm leading you in here with horizontals, and boom, I stop you with the vertical.
Can I ask you a horribly nerdy question?
Sure.
When you do the like the Coca-Cola here, do you I don't know, how do you do that? Do you sketch in the Coca-Cola? Do you just try to paint it dead? Do you go back and touch it up with red? And
No, I don't. This is all detail. This gets done at the very end. I just paint black in the sign, black in the shape, black in some of the color patterns. The detail, the lettering goes in at the very end. The other thing you see in this thing is also atmospheric perspective. Remember in drawing, we talked about that. The dark values get lighter faster than the light values get dark.
So wait,
and they end up in a sort of a neutral gray, bluish back here.
Say that again a little bit slower. The darker.
It's atmospheric perspective, which we covered in drawing. It's in one of the drawing videos. The darker values, okay, here, they get lighter faster than the light values get darker until you end up with a neutral gray back here, typically a blue gray or a purple gray, and that's called atmospheric perspective. The other thing you have in here is linear perspective, and that's on the, basically this store going back in space. Let's cover one more. Actually, we'll cover two more. This is an example of a contemporary still life. This is high key. It's mostly lights, some midtones, and very few darks. And again, it's a contemporary still life in that it's a bunch of tools, but you notice I still have a triangular pattern, and I'm still trying to get you to focus right here. And I'm leading you in with the tools. I'm actually leading you into the focal point with the tools. All right, one more. Okay, and that's this one. This again is a contemporary figurative painting, and again it's basically an orange and blue composition. And what I'm doing you here, again, this is the biggest value contrast. I'm leading you into her face, but the secondary figure, the reflective figure in the mirror, I actually bring you around and then back in with the fan and the secondary figure. So I'm constantly bringing you around back to the focal point. Okay? Okay, now cut it.